They called it a reconnaissance mission. Kael Thyros called it something else in the private language of people who have stopped lying to themselves. He called it a gamble, and he knew the odds, and he went anyway. Because the rival fragment's crystalline housing was the one thing the coalition did not have a map to, and without a map you cannot plan a strike, and without a strike the Reclaimer Armada reaches Solabri Prime with a god in its hold. Vex Karen had spent 6 weeks building the credentials, false manifests, forged maintenance contracts, a docking request that matched the Permanence's own supply rotation down to the weight of the cargo. She had run 17 extraction scenarios. She had planned for ambush, for sensor detection, for a compromised team member. She had not planned for the ship itself. The maintenance docking was clean. 4 figures in merchant clothes moving through the Permanence's airlock and into the lower decks. Corridors progenitor scaled and narrowed further by 12 centuries of human retrofit. Amber emergency strips pulsing in rhythms no human engineer had programmed. Kael moved with his team in tight formation, his prosthetic hand brushing the wall as he counted junctions. He felt the wall warm at his touch. He did not stop. The lower decks of the Permanence were not a maze, they were a mouth. The junctions branched at intervals the team's map said were random, but Kael had walked enough progenitor architecture to know that nothing in these structures was random. Every geometry served a function. Every corridor directed something towards something else. He counted 4 junctions. At the 5th, the amber light in the walls brightened, fractionally, as if the ship had recognized an arrival it had been expecting. Commandant Galan had been waiting at the 4th junction for 11 minutes. He wore Reclaimer command armor of black progenitor alloy plate, the fragment's glyph etched at his sternum, his curved boarding saber of progenitor forged metal humming faintly in his 3-fingered grip. He did not shout a warning. The ambush was precise, professional, and over in 40 seconds. 3 members of Kael's strike team went down. Kael went to his knees. The corridor's amber veins pulsed once, bright, almost celebratory, and then settled back to their ordinary rhythm. As if the ship had been waiting for this, as if the ship had been expecting him. Galan looked down at the man on his knees and said nothing. There was nothing to say. The mission had not been compromised. It had been completed, just not by the team that planned it. Admiral Kess was on the bridge when they brought the news. She stood at her command position and listened to Galen's report with her dark amber eyes fixed on the viewport and her left ring finger moving slowly over the living metal band that served as her progenitor interface. She did not smile. She pressed her palm flat against the console and said, "Take him to the hold, not the brig, the hold." Everyone on the bridge understood the difference. The crystal hold was the only space on the Permanence without text, a cylindrical chamber of black progenitor alloy, walls bare and unscripted, because the fragment's presence made written language redundant. At its center, suspended in a containment field of amber light, the crystalline core rotated slowly. A faceted mass the size of a human torso, dark amber shot through with cold white geometric veins. The floor beneath it was worn smooth by 12 centuries of supplicants kneeling. They stood Kael before the crystal and stepped back. And the fragment noticed him. It did not speak immediately. It looked, or did whatever the oldest surviving progenitor consciousness does in place of looking. And the amber light in the containment field shifted, fractionally, toward the frequency of Kael's pulse. His prosthetic hand began to warm. The joint mechanisms, which had been still, began to move in slow articulation, as if something was learning the shape of the hand from the inside. Kael watched his own fingers moving without his permission, and felt, for the first time in years, the specific grief of a man whose father's ghost is offering him something his father never could. He had been trained by the Silent Choir in resistance protocols that covered chemical interrogation, sensory deprivation, psychological leverage. None of those protocols covered a 12-century-old alien intelligence discovering your prosthetic hand and deciding it recognized you. Kess entered the hold 20 minutes after Kael was brought in. She stood at the chamber's threshold and watched the amber light pulse in sync with the man's heartbeat, and stroked the living metal ring on her finger without seeming to notice she was doing it. Then she turned to the broadcast array mounted on the hold's outer wall, installed there before this specific mission, as if someone had anticipated the need and activated it. The broadcast went to every open channel in the charted galaxy. It showed Kael Thyros standing in the amber light of the crystal hold with his wrists locked and his prosthetic hand moving in slow articulation against his will. It showed the fragment's light shifting to match his pulse. It showed the progenitor alloy fingers opening and closing in a rhythm that was not Kael's intention and was not Galan's command. A conversation between the ancient system and the alloy cast in the shape of a human hand, conducted in front of the entire watching galaxy. And over the ship's internal systems, in a register that bypassed the ears entirely and resonated in the bones of the skull, the fragment began to speak. Not to Kess, not to the galaxy, to Kael. Every surface in the hold displayed cascading progenitor script in a dialect 12 centuries out of date, rearranging faster than any human eye could follow. The air vibrated at a frequency felt in the sternum. It smelled of ozone and something older, like the memory of heat from a star that has already cooled. The offer was simple, as all the oldest offers are. House Thyros had spent 3 generations trying to build something permanent, a legacy that would outlast the houses, outlast the succession crises, outlast the slow entropy of a galaxy that had forgotten what it was built on. Lord Thyros had tried to buy permanence with his own mind, letting the progenitor implant integrate him until the man and the signal shared a skull, and the man lost. He had wanted his house to last. The fragment offered to make it last. Not metaphorically, not dynastically, permanently. The way progenitor systems were permanent, maintained and sustained, and never permitted to fail. The way the Permanence itself had sailed for 12 centuries without a hull breach or a failed drive. The way the fragment had kept its people alive in deep space when every charted civilization had forgotten they existed. Join, and House Thyros becomes the foundation of the new order. Not a client house, not a vassal, the foundation, the name in the cornerstone, the first word of the new language. The amber light pulsed. The prosthetic hand opened. Kael looked at his own fingers moving without his permission and felt the specific grief of a man whose father's ghost is offering him something his father never could. He did not answer. The fragment waited. He did not answer. The fragment, which had waited 1,200 years for the right moment, was entirely capable of waiting a little longer. Kess stood at the hold's threshold and watched him. She had done what she came to do. The broadcast was out. Serethi had seen it. The galaxy had seen it. Now it was a question of what Serethi would do. Kess had spent 3 months studying Serethi Vos, and she believed she knew the answer. She stroked the living metal ring on her finger. She was not entirely wrong. She was not entirely right. Naveen Kess watched from the Permanence's clerical deck 3 levels above the hold. He was a young man with the same bronze skin and amber eyes as his mother, softer featured, a scholar's face on a soldier's frame, his theological journal open on his knee. He watched the fragment offer Kael what it had offered every person who had ever become a reclaimer: permanence, legacy, a name that would not be erased. He opened his journal to a fresh page. He wrote 1 word, then he crossed it out. Vex Karen watched from the extraction shuttle 3 kilometers off the Permanence's maintenance ring in a debris shadow. She had planned 17 extraction scenarios. She watched the amber light pulse and understood, with the cold clarity of a professional confronting a failure she cannot explain, that the ambush was not a leak. The Permanence's systems had guided Kael's team to that junction the way a river guides water to the sea. Not by force, but by the shape of the ground. The fragment had not been surprised, the fragment had been ready. The broadcast ran for 11 minutes. On 14 worlds, people stopped what they were doing and watched a man's prosthetic hand move without his permission in amber light. On Jessad, in the converted grain silo that served as Coalition Command, Serethi Voss stood at the rough-cut stone table and watched the feed. The binding scars at her neck, inert for 2 seasons, dead grey-white since the severance, began to pulse. Faintly, barely. The fragment signal strong enough to reach her residual connection across the void. Not her signal, the fragment's. Strong enough to reach her residual connection across the void, through the hull of the Permanence and the distance between stars, because the fragment was broadcasting at full power, and her scars, dead as they were, still remembered what it felt like to be called. She watched Kael's prosthetic hand move. She watched the amber light match his heartbeat. She pressed her own scarred forearm flat against the stone table and breathed. The broadcast ended. In the hold, the amber light returned to its ordinary pulse. Slower now, no longer matching Kael's heartbeat, as if the fragment had made its offer and was content to wait. The script faded from the walls. The air stopped vibrating. Kael's prosthetic hand was still. His wrists were still locked. He was still standing in front of 12 centuries of accumulated patience, and he had not said yes, and he had not said no. The fragment, which had waited 1,200 years for the right moment, was entirely capable of waiting a little longer. Kael understood this. He had been trained by the silent choir to resist everything a human adversary could deploy. He had not been trained for patience that measured itself in centuries. He stood in the amber light and held his silence like a blade, and the blade was the only thing he had left, and he held it. Kess left the hold. She walked the Permanence's amber-veined corridors toward the bridge, her left ring finger moving over the living metal band, and she thought about the broadcast and what it had shown. She had intended to show leverage, a captive, a threat, a reason for Serethi to come to the table. She had shown something more than that. She had shown the fragment reaching for someone it had not been given. She had shown the galaxy that the fragment wanted. In the Jessad bunker, the broadcast feed went dark. The communication terminal returned to its ordinary scrolling. Status reports, chorus coordination signals, the quiet traffic of a coalition holding itself together across 14 worlds. Serethi stood at the stone table with her palm still flat on its surface and looked at the faint amber trace the fragment's signal had left in her old scars. Already fading, already dimming back to the inert grey-white they had been for 2 seasons. Some doors are heavier going in than coming out. Some offers are most dangerous not when they are false, but when they are true. Kael Thyros stood in the amber light of the crystal hold, and the fragment waited. And the fragment was patient the way only something that has never needed to hurry can be patient, with the absolute confidence of a system that has run without failure for 1,200 years, and sees no reason to believe this moment will be different from any other. In the Jessad bunker, Serethi lifted her palm from the stone table and looked at the map of the galaxy's death worlds spread beneath her hands. Green pins and red pins and yellow pins marking the places where people were trying to survive, in the gap between what the old order had promised and what the new one had not yet built. She turned to the communication terminal. She opened a channel. The episode ends before she speaks. Some answers are not the last word. Some silences are the loudest thing in the room.